Ladies and gentlemen, welcome and good morning. I am Lieutenant Junior Grade Bryce Matakis, Prospective Executive Officer of the cutter Terrell Horne, and it is my privilege to be your Master of Ceremonies this morning. On behalf of the Commandant of the United States Coast Guard, welcome to the commissioning of the cutter Terrell Horne. At this time, I ask that you please silence all electronic devices for the Should you need medical assistance, please get the attention of an usher. Medical personnel are standing by to assist. In case of an emergency that requires evacuation, please leave your belongings in place and follow the instructions of law enforcement officers. Military members, please remain covered and follow my lead for rendering honors throughout the ceremony. During the national anthem, guests not in uniform, please stand facing the flag with your right hand over your heart. Veterans are invited to follow my lead in rendering salutes. The commissioning ceremony is one of the most important traditional milestones in the life of a cutter, as it represents her entry into active service and her readiness to conduct Coast Guard operations. This time-honored tradition dates back to the commissioning of our first revenue cutter, the Massachusetts, launched in 1991. Since that date, hundreds of Coast Guard cutters have undergone the transition from a silent hull to a living cutter of the fleet. Our commissioning crew, hereafter known as plank owners, are in formation and are ready to assume the watch. Prior to introducing our official party, I'd like to introduce some distinguished guests joining us in the audience. Please hold your applause until the end. Mrs. Dawn Schultz, Coast Guard Ombudsman at Large. 13th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, Jason Vanderhayden. Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard Reserve, George Williamson. 11th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, Mike Levitt, U.S. Coast Guard, retired. 10th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, Skip Bowen, U.S. Coast Guard, retired, and Vice President of Government Relations, Bollinger Shipyards. Rear Admiral Wayne Justice, U.S. Coast Guard, retired. Captain Monica Rochester, Coast Guard Captain of the Port, Los Angeles Long Beach. Captain Rebecca Orr, Deputy Commander, Sector Long Beach. Captain Charlene Downey, former Captain of the Port, U.S. Coast Guard, retired. Commander William Wimburn, Officer of the Coast Guard Base, Los Angeles Long Beach. Master Brian Fowler, 11th District Command Master Chief. Brigadier General Ruth Wong, Director of the County of Los Angeles Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, U.S. Air Force, retired. Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lasser, Commissioner for the Los Angeles Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, U.S. Air Force. Chief Tom Gazy, Chief of the Los Angeles Port. James Mold, Chief of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Chief Ronnie Villanueva, Deputy Chief, Los Angeles Fire Department. Commodore Chris Harshfield, Coast Guard Auxiliary, 11th District. State, county, and local California partners, the Horne family in attendance, all active duty, reserve, and retired military officers and enlisted personnel. Last but not least, Coast Guard Auxiliary members, our uniformed volunteer force, and partner federal agencies. Thank you all for joining us today. In addition, today's ceremony would not have been possible without the outstanding support and contributions of Bollinger Shipyards, L3 Technologies, the Coast Guard Foundation, the Long Beach Navy League Council, and other generous donors and sponsors. The incredible support they have put into this morning's ceremony, as well as the warm welcome they and many others have provided to our crew, have been second to none. Thank you. The Coast Guard Honor Guard are providing today's ceremonial detail. Additionally, the 300th Armory Band are providing today's ceremonial music. Thank you for donating your time and talent. And finally, to our distinguished guests, congressional staff members, civil and local officials, Coast Guardsmen, fellow service members, and the family and friends of the crew of the cutter Terrell Horne, and those of you joining us online from around the world. Thank you all for joining us on this momentous occasion. We have gathered here today to celebrate and honor Senior Chief Petty Officer Terrell E. Horne III and commission the cutter that will carry on his legacy. Senior Chief Petty Officer Terrell Edwin Horne III was assigned aboard Coast Guard cutter Halibut as the Executive Petty Officer. On December 2, 2012, Halibut was conducting counter-smuggling operations near Santa Cruz Island. Senior Chief Petty Officer Horne deployed aboard Halibut's cutter boat with 3 other crew members to investigate a suspect vessel loitering in the area without navigation lights. Upon approaching the unlit vessel and identifying themselves as federal officers, the vessel ignored commands to stop and instead rapidly accelerated towards them. The boarding team immediately maneuvered to avoid the oncoming vessel and fired sidearms in self-defense. When he recognized that impact with the oncoming vessel was unavoidable, Senior Chief Petty Officer Horne, disregarding his own safety in order to protect his fellow crew members, forcibly pushed the coxswain from the helm, directly exposing himself to the oncoming vessel. The violence of the subsequent collision forcibly ejected him from the boat, and despite immediate recovery from the water and application of first aid by his shipmates, he succumbed to the injuries received during the incident. Senior Chief Petty Officer Horne demonstrated remarkable initiative, daring, and exceptional fortitude in spite of imminent personal danger. His courage and devotion to duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Please join me with a big round of applause in his honor. Section leader, bring the ship's company to attention.
Aye, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the arrival of today's official party and remain standing for the rendering of honors, the presentation of colors, the playing of our national anthem, and the invocation. It is my pleasure to introduce the official party. Already joining us on the stage is Chaplain Lieutenant Commander Jason DePinto, U.S. Navy Chaplain, Coast Guard 11th District. Colonel Terrell E. Horne Sr., U.S. Air Force retired, long glass presenter. Mr. Bob Montgomery, Director of Maritime Programs for L3 Technologies, and Mr. Art McFate, Senior Manager, Bollinger Shipyards. Randy Kemper, ship sponsor. Prospective commanding officer, Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne. District 11 arriving. United States Coast Guard arriving. Military personnel, hand salute. Ready to. Color guard, present the colors. Hand salute.
Coast, sir. Move. On. 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 Coast. Halt. And by. Ready?
Ready, two. Ship's company, parade rest. Chaplain DePinto will now deliver the invocation.
Good morning. Let us pray. The Lord is thy light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Almighty God, on this beautiful day, we acknowledge our deep dependence upon you. Your word says that you formed us out of the dust of the ground and breathed into us the breath of life. We model your creative example in this ship that we've created, not out of the dust of the earth, but forged out of iron and steel. And as this ship and her plank owners are fused today, may they breathe into her the same spirit of life that you give to each and every one of us. That Terrell Horne's missions may be a living extension of the life-saving and the law-keeping spirit that Senior Chief demonstrated with such bravery and strength of character right here in Southern California. That in the missions that you entrust to us in the Coast Guard throughout the centuries and through our elected leaders, that we will remember that your word says, those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings as eagle. The psalmist tells us that some went down to the sea in ships, doing business on the great waters. They saw the deeds of the Lord and his wondrous works in the deep. Be with this crew and this command in the months and years and decades ahead as they go down to the sea in ships. May they see your wondrous works. Be with their families. Be with their marriages, their children, their friends. Keep them strong and strengthen their faith. Draw close to them, Lord, that they may feel your love. When the seas are rough, remind them that you are the God who walks on water and you are the God who calms the storm. And when the suns break out and the seas are calm, may they rejoice and give thanks to you for your gracious love and your wondrous creation. And for all of us, make us always ready, Lord, for whatever you call us to. May your word be a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. And may we hold the Coast Guard values deep in our hearts for this ship, for our missions, for the commands, and for the commanders, both past, present, and future. We lift our hearts to you in gratitude, giving you all of these things and the prayers that we guard silently in our hearts. In your precious and holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Please be seated. It is now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Art McFate, Senior Manager, Bollinger Shipyards.
Admiral Schultz, Rear Admiral Gautier, Master Chief Vander Hayden, FRC crew and families, and especially cutter sponsor, Miss Brandy Kemper, and all the Horne family members here today. On behalf of Ben Bordelon, the men and women of Bollinger Shipyards, I bring you greetings from Cajun country, Cajun cutter country. It's an honor to celebrate the Coast Commission of the newest Coast Guard fast response cutter with you today. Bollinger Shipyards is celebrating 74 years of committed service to our customers. This customer-focused dedication has resulted in the longest-standing shipbuilder customer relations with the modern American history, Bollinger Shipyards in the United States Coast Guard. We are proud of the Endurance Association. We are proud of this Endurance Association, which began 34 years ago with the construction of the Island class, shifting to the Marine Protector class, continues to endure with the Sentinel class, totaling 154 vessels delivered in the last 30 years. We're honored to have built the new class patrol craft for every Coast Guard and the entire fleet for the last 3 decades. The men and women of Bollinger Shipyards focus on workmanship, quality, our commitment to safety and an environment. This dedication and focus has resulted in the delivery of the last 15 cutters with 0 production discrepancies. This level of quality is unheard of in the shipbuilding industry. And as a result of the men and women of Bollinger, along with our partners, vendors, contractors, and also the Coast Guard Project Resident Office. In 2014, Ms. Rachel Horne reached out to Bollinger Shipyards, proposing a request to have the Horne children baptized with U.S. Coast Guard Terrell Horne ship's bell. This is a long-standing tradition in naval services, and Bollinger was happy to help to assist. In a ceremony held on Johns Island in South Carolina in May of 2015, Cade, Miller, and Wells Horne were baptized by Navy Chaplain Heckathorn. On behalf of Bollinger and the Coast Guard team, Mr. Bowen will present the original Horne's bell to Ms. Rachel Horne. Could Mr. Skip Bowen, Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, retired, and Vice President of Government Relations for Bollinger Shipyard, and Ms. Horne, please join me on the stage.
Good morning. Back in November 2014, I received an email from Sector Los Angeles Long Beach Commander Captain Jennifer Williams. I believe she's here today. In it, she stated, "It has been 2 short years, and the last of Terrell's shipmates on the Halibut are just finishing up their tours this summer. And here at the sector, many of us are still here too. The crew's wounds are still visible, and special honors like the building naming at the sector, the cutter being named after Terrell, and the ship's bell being engraved with his sons' names really means so much to me and so many others. So speaking today for the Bollinger Coast Guard team in Lockport, words cannot express the grief that we collectively feel even today, and we are so honored to have had a small part in honoring Terrell Horne with this bell. The inscription on the ship's mounting plate reads, WPC 1131 Terrell Horne. A ship's bell is traditionally used to regulate the crew's duty watches and help the vessel safely navigate in poor visibility. To honor the memory of Terrell Horne, the ship's bell for WPC 1131 is presented to Rachel Horne. The inside of the bell is engraved with the names of Cade Mason Horne, Miller Patrick Horne, and Wells Terrell Horne, who were baptized in the ship's bell in May of 2015. Terrell Horne's spirit, as personified through this bell, will forever stand watch over Cade, Miller, and Wells, and help them navigate through the sunshine and storms of their lives. Semper Paratus.
Coast Guard crews are selected during the lead up to the vessel's delivery and will serve a finite period of time before moving on to other cutters or job responsibilities. In contrast, the ship's sponsor is traditionally considered a permanent member of the crew and bestows good luck and divine protection aboard. She advocates for the ship's continued service and well-being. As Terrell Horne's sister, Miss Brandy Kemper will ensure that Terrell's legacy of leadership and sacrifice continue to guide this crew through the years of service. Ms. Kemper, would you please join me at this podium? Ms. Kemper, on behalf of Bollinger Shipyards, please accept this framed poster of Terrell Horne and a symbol of appreciation for your sponsoring this cutter. To the crew, fair winds and following seas. Know that when those winds become tempests and the seas maelstroms, you're on the finest, most seaworthy vessel that could be built. God bless you in your future journeys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McFate. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Bob Montgomery, Director of Maritime Programs for L3 Technologies.
Thank you. The men and women of L3 Technologies are proud to be part of the Bollinger Coast Guard team in bringing these fantastic fast response cutters to life. L3 Communication Systems East in New Jersey is committed to providing game-changing C4ISR systems to the Coast Guard throughout the life of the ships, which provide significant operational advantages to these crews as they perform their various missions. At each commissioning, L3 produces a poster that commemorates the heroism of the ship's namesake. The posters that you see here framed will be given out later on today following today's ceremony and also at the reception. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Coast Guard Foundation. The Coast Guard Foundation enriches the lives of Coast Guard members and their families through education, morale, and relief. Our Fallen Heroes Scholarship Fund assists families during their times of injury and loss. Most notably, covers all college expenses for Rachel Horne's 3 sons, as they already have paid the ultimate sacrifice to our country. Joining us this morning are 3 fellow board members, Bill Colliard, Greg Bombard, and Commander Dick Simmons, retired. I'd like to invite Commander Dick Simmons and Lieutenant Beal to the stage so that we could present a morale check from the Coast Guard Foundation to the crew. Through the generosity of numerous donors, including Jeff and Paula Loftus, Dick and Annette Simmons, Laura Rakel, and Emil Latanu, who have created the ship's morale fund in the amount of $10,000. The Coast Guard Foundation, also through its generous donors and L3 Technologies, wish you, your crew, and all your family members the very best. Semper Paratus.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to introduce Commander, 11th District, Rear Admiral Peter Godier.
Commandant, Master Chief Petty Officer, and Reserve Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, the extended Horne family, colleagues, coasties, families, and friends. What an honor it is to be here today with you all to share this poignant moment to commission this marvelous cutter and to celebrate the legacy of a California native and a Coast Guard hero, Senior Chief Terrell Horne. I'd like to just take a few minutes to talk to you about the importance of this cutter to this region. Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne is the third of 4 fast response cutters to be homeported right here in San Pedro, California. As the District 11 commander, I just can't be more excited to have 4 of these fine cutters here in California in District 11, which includes an expansive stretch of ocean ranging from the Oregon-California border to the California-Mexican border, and then the international waters all the way down the spine of Mexico, Central America, and South America. Just like the Coast Guard cutter Halibut, this ship where Senior Chief Horne served as Executive Petty Officer, this fine cutter will do all the same Coast Guard cutter missions in the waters off California, but the similarity ends there. The Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne will operate with capabilities we've never had before, allowing us to employ her in a way we've never done before with any of our previous patrol craft. The ship you see before you, simply put, is a game changer for us here in the 11th District. With a top speed of 30 knots, it's faster and can get on scene sooner than any other patrol boat. It has longer endurance and better seakeeping ability, making the Coast Guard better able to respond to cases farther offshore and in worse weather. And it has a state-of-the-art communications and sensor suite, linking it together in a network with command centers, aircraft, and partnerships in aircraft to vastly improve our knowledge of what's happening out there on the high seas. This cutter will keep us ready, more prepared to rescue mariners in distress, protect our precious fisheries and natural resources, and guard our maritime borders. It will keep us relevant to the needs of this region, more effective in keeping our waterways safe and secure, like right here in this Los Angeles and Long Beach port complex, where we help enable the largest container ship complex in America to generate nearly $500 billion worth of commerce annually. And this cutter will keep us more responsive to natural disasters, oil spills, and drug and human smuggling threats. We've only had fast response cutters homeported here since November in San Pedro, but we've already reaped the benefits. Our first fast response cutter in service, the Forrest Rednauer, which is the cutter to your right in the back, just returned from a patrol off Central America just in the wee hours of yesterday morning. It was there building relationship with the Guatemalan Navy and Special Forces and disrupting illegal drug shipments where they are most vulnerable on the high seas. As we commission Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne to life today, I'm proud to tell you that this cutter has already accomplished Coast Guard missions. In November, when the crew was training off of Key West, Florida, they received a call from the sector Key West there that there were 2 people spotted that were clinging to coolers about 15 miles offshore Key West. When they received the call, they made best speed, diverting from their training mission to recover the 2 people and bring them to safety. It turns out those 2 people had gotten underway from Key West towards Mexico in an overloaded fishing boat 3 days before. The fishing vessel overturned and sank, and those 2 individuals had been clinging to those coolers for 3 days. Cold, hungry, dehydrated, circled by sharks, they surely would have perished had the Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne had not been there to rescue them. In keeping with Senior Chief Horne's final act of saving life, I think it's only proper that the cutter named after him begins what's going to be an illustrious history by saving lives as well. Thank you to the officers and crew of the Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne for your tremendous work, from cutting the point where we cut steel in Lockport, Louisiana down bayou, to Key West, Florida, through the Panama Canal, up the coast of Central America and Mexico, and finally here in California. It's been a lot of work to bring this cutter to where she is today. We expect great things from you in District 11, worthy of the heroic deeds of Senior Chief Horne. And the people of this are going to depend on that. I have no doubt that this capable cutter and this Motivate crew will deliver those high expectations. Semper Paratus and Godspeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my distinct honor to introduce Admiral Carl Schultz, Commandant, United States Coast Guard, and today's presiding official.
Good morning. It is truly a treat to be back here on the waterfront of Los Angeles, Long Beach, in front of the sector building, where I had the privilege to be part of the ceremony that named this building after Terrell Horne III. It's just a privilege to be here on the waterfront. As we're sitting here, you may not hear this in the back, but as a cutterman who went to sea for about 11.5 years, I was hearing the sound of new fast response against the dock here is a little bit exciting. And there's a lot of history on these 4 cutters. You know, 3 of the cutters are unique and distinct. Robert Ward was a Coast Guardsman in the Second World War during the Normandy beach landing that went in and pulled soldiers off the beachhead. And we're coming up on the 75th anniversary of Normandy invasion this summer on June 6th. Benjamin Bottoms was an aviator, a radioman, that was in the airplane that went down in Greenland. First time they ever shot a Grumman duck down on the ice cap to go rescue Air Force bombers. And they went out and pulled 2 folks back, rescued them. On the second day, Benjamin Bottoms was lost. They lost radio contact. 75 years or so before they located their bodies. The 3rd vessel, Forrest Ridnour, who just got back, and Admiral Gautier spoke about their accomplishments here just down off the, in the transit zone off the coast of Guatemala. Ridnour was part of the crew that rescued 133 American soldiers aboard the Army transport ship, the Dorchester, that was sunk by German torpedo. And that is all a rich part of our history. We haven't done a great job, and we're getting better about telling our history. And these vast response cutters, the Sentinel class, with the hand of Skip Bowen and one of my predecessors, Thad Allen, decided these should be named after our listed heroes. And then now the distinction. We've got the Terrell Horne, 1131. This is different because Terrell Horne's a contemporary hero in the Coast Guard, a modern hero. Many in the audience today served alongside Chief Horne, posthumously honored in advance to Senior Chief Horne. And it's just a treat to be here today. I want to welcome, the XO did a great job of all our guests, but I just want to call out our senior flag officers, past and present, our senior enlisted leaders, past and present. I won't go through names, but we are honored by your presence here today. To the commissioning committee, what a great job. There is no small feat bringing a ship from being built down in the bayous in Lockport, Louisiana, through to Key West for certification trials, where some of the Horne family met up and had a chance to ride on the ship, see the ship, to getting her through the Panama Canal here on the waterfront of Los Angeles Beach, and now into service. There was a wonderful evening event last night, the chairman's reception, and I just want to ask for a round of applause for the commissioning committee and all the folks here at Sector LAB and Base LAB. And to the Horne, special welcome to you, family of Terrell Horne III. We pay tribute with the commissioning this cutter to you. This day belongs to you. On behalf of every man and woman in Coast Guard uniform, all men and women across the nation in uniform, your presence is special. We are honored and privileged to be amongst you this morning, along with friends, family, and shipmates. Rachel, starting with you. You're just a remarkably strong, truly special person. And we're just thrilled to be here with you. This day has been a long time coming here. You and the boys, Rachel's now a teacher, preschool teacher, back in Charleston, and that seems like a great place for just a difference maker in the world to be, touching the future of our great nation. To the boys, Cade, Miller, Wells is coming and going. I seen him back there. Keep an eye on Grandma with him out there, but I know you can hear me, Wells. Just great to be here with you today, boys. We are honored to be alongside you. To the parents who instilled a sense of pride in Terrell Edwin Horne III. Mom, Ruth Kuipers. Got to know Ruth a little bit. Thank you for being here. We've talked over the years. Ruth is now a Coast Guard auxiliarist, and around her busy life with a couple jobs and other things, she is part of the Coast Guard family, not just as a mom of a fallen Coast Guardsman, but as a Coast Guard auxiliarist herself. Ruth, it is good to see you. Thank you for being here. Terry and Phyllis, also part of that team of raising such a fine young man. And gotten to know you over the years and really excited to have you here. We've got sisters Georgiana, DeSev, and good to see you, Georgiana. Meet your son this morning. Our ship sponsor, Brandy Kemper, and her husband, Matt. I couldn't think of a better match there. It's just nice to see the connective tissue with the family as part of today. We've got other members of the Kuiper family here, and I had a chance to interact last night in an extended family. It is terrific. And finally, Terrell Horne Sr., who served as a colonel in the United States Air Force, 27 years. He's our long glass presenter today. And one of the appropriate fitting thing for the family patriarch to have the opportunity to be here and present that long glass. That is steeped in tradition. And if you don't know it, he set the bar pretty high for all of us because he just retired this past fall at 90 years of age. So if any of you guys are thinking about quitting in your 50s or 60s, I'm going to pull Terrell Horne along, Senior, and have him give you a little chatting to. Kip Ludit, I'm not sure if Kip's here this morning, but Kip really chaired that commissioning committee. And Kip, are you here today? Kip, I think, had some job responsibilities, but that was just a Herculean effort. And Bob and the Coast Guard Foundation, you can't say enough about what you do to pull these events together. The donation, the $10,000 donation to kick the morale fund off, and really the long ball here with the scholarships for the boys. We are just honored for what our Coast Guard Foundation did in the wake of the events of December 2nd to get shipmates, family, and support them here, and what they continue to do to try to lend some support and rally around this Horne family going forward here. We have an obligation to continue to stay engaged in that space. You know, today as a Commandant, I am humbled, honored to pay tribute to the life of Terrell Horne III. He served under my command here in the 11th District on board the Coast Guard Cutter Halibut, as you heard, as Executive Petty Officer on that fateful December 2nd evening, 2012. Terrell's loss was one of the hardest things I've endured as a commander in any capacity in 36 years. His memory lives on with me. It lives on in all of us in attendance today. It lives on across the Coast Guard. I didn't have the privilege of knowing Terrell very well. Matter of fact, I met him the Wednesday before that fateful Saturday night, had visited the ship, and it was clearly apparent that guy was the center of gravity of that crew. He was the XPO. The sun rose and set around the XPO and the development of the crew members and the shipmates and the caliber of those human beings. I remember the remarkable bravery he displayed that night, and I remember just how his shipmates held him in esteem and high regard for the man he was, for the Coast Guardsman he was. He died safeguarding Americans from the scourge of illicit narcotics and illegal smuggling of other commodities here right off the coast of Southern California. Our nation is more secure today because of Terrell Horne III. The father of our Coast Guard, the Secretary of Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, said, "There is a certain enthusiasm in liberty that makes human nature rise above itself in acts of bravery and heroism." As Terrell knew and demonstrated, being a Coast Guardsman is more than donning a uniform or an emblem. And Terrell donned this uniform with tremendous pride. That was clear if you look through his service record. Impeccable. Being a Coast Guardsman is also a devotion to a higher calling. And it's a willingness to join the long blue line who protect, defend, and save, and shield our nation and its people at any and all cost. In the months and years following Terrell Horne's death, I've had conversations with various family members about the possibility of this day, about bringing a ship into service bearing his name. And here we are. The chap said great words, and I got to tell you, there's some divine intervention. I feel like God's smiling down on us as his Senior Chief Horne, and this is just a special moment being here. As we commission the 31st Fast Response Cutter in Senior Chief Terrell Horne's honor. Terrell's legacy of selfless leadership and courage is henceforth indelibly stamped in our service's rich history. Senior Chief Horne is a modern hero, with shipmates he served alongside still in service. His legacy bridges our contemporary history with the yet-to-be history of this remarkable and highly capable ship. The crew has adopted the motto for this ship: courage, honor, sacrifice. And I admire that selection, as it symbolizes the ethos of its namesake. This motto is emblazoned on Cutter Terrell Horne's seal. It captures the heart, the mindset for the eager crew that will soon be operating their cutter in execution of our nation's homeland security, defense, and rescue missions. I look at this cutter that bears Senior Terrell Horne's name, a name recognized and revered across the service, and I am humbled. This ship is a visible symbol of everything our service stands for, everything, and a reminder of Terrell's commitment to his nation and his crew, a reminder of his courage, honor, and sacrifice. Truly, truly noble attributes. You know his story, for those that don't know. Born in Mountain View, California in October 1978. Graduated from Patterson High School with a love of the water and a desire to help people. I think he found the right calling. After enlisting in the Coast Guard in 1999, he was a bosun mate. He served at stations Emerald Island, North Carolina, Humboldt Bay, California, and Charleston, South Carolina. Also sailed aboard the 378-foot high-endurance cutter Dallas and ended up as XPO aboard Coast Guard cutter Halibut right here in Southern California. Throughout his career, Terrell profoundly impacted the crew and leaders at each of his units. From the beginning, he demonstrated that selfless leadership, those special traits that define the best of Coast Guard men and women. Even as a seaman, Terrell was commended for going above and beyond training his shipmates, fellow boat crew members. And that devotion was apparent at every turn of his 14-year Coast Guard career. He was a leader who set aside his own needs to support the needs of others. And we know the story. As I recall, December 2nd, 2012, investigating unlit vessel suspected of smuggling narcotics. When Halibut small boat approached, the suspect vessel unexpectedly turned and ran down the small boat. His final action was putting himself between that approaching small boat and his shipmates. Without hesitation or concern for himself, he reached forward into the imminent danger. And in his efforts to protect his shipmates, Terrell was fatally injured. Senior Chief Horne put himself before others. On this night, he made the ultimate sacrifice in service of his nation. Throughout that 14-year career, he selflessly served others. He stood the watch on the front lines each and every one of those 14 years of the aforementioned assignments, with a dedication of duty that allows us to hold to our motto of Semper Paratus, always ready. For his courage and heroism, posthumously awarded the Coast Guard Medal and advanced to Senior Chief Petty Officer. He's a hero of the highest caliber who epitomized selfless leadership. Today, as we commission this cutter, Terrell's service and sacrifice will be deeply ingrained into the fabric of our Coast Guard, into the fabric of our Coast Guard history. He is an inspiration to every man and woman, from every Coast Guardsman who had the privilege to serve alongside, for those who didn't but have heard the story of his heroism, and to every Coast Guard man and woman who will henceforth serve aboard this fine ship. To the plank owners, I congratulate all of you for this distinction, this honor, to serve aboard this great ship in this fine home port. You are the lifeblood of this newly commissioned vessel. I know you will continue to honor the name of this cutter through your hard work, through your dedication, to your devotion, as you take to the seas It is you that will start to write the next chapters in this ship's long and yet to be defined distinguished history. April, just a couple short weeks, marks 25th anniversary when we embraced our core values of honor, respect, and devotion to duty. I think many think those have been with the Coast Guard since our origins back in 1790. We're coming up on the 25th anniversary. And when I just think about those values, they are truly embodied in the Coast Guardsman we know as Terrell Horne III. He epitomized this, and that sets the bar for all of us. Lieutenant Beale, I charge you and your shipmates to carry out the operations of this ship in such a manner as to be worthy of the traditions of self-sacrifice, inspirational leadership, unwavering dedication to duty, traits exemplified by this cutter's distinguished and heroic namesake, Senior Chief Terrell Edwin Horne III. Semper Paratus, God bless.
Thank you, Admiral Schultz. Ladies and gentlemen, Coast Guard Cutter Terrell Horne's prospective commanding officer, Lieutenant John Beale.
I would like to ask Lieutenant Commander Stuart Seibert to join me on stage. Lieutenant Commander Seibert was Senior Chief Horne's commanding officer on Coast Guard Cutter Halibut, and he today will present the cutter's commissioning pennant for use in the ceremony.
Good morning. Rachel, Kate, Miller, and Wells. Colonel Horne, Mr. and Mrs. Horne, Lieutenant Beale, and the prospective crew of Coast Guard Cutter Halibut, my former shipmates from Coast Guard Cutter Halibut, and the entire extended Horne, Carpenter, and Kuipers families. It is truly humbling to stand before you all today as we commission Coast Guard Cutter Terrell Horne. Admiral Schultz, Admiral Gautier, and all of the distinguished guests in the audience here today, thank you all for being here to honor my shipmate. As the Commandant pointed out, today is important because today is a rare opportunity. And while there are dozens of fine Coast Guard cutters in our fleet that are named after very worthy heroes, Coast Guard Cutter Terrell Horne is named after a legend. He's named after a legend that we can't just read about. There are people in our service today who had the distinct honor and privilege of serving alongside this great man. I know there's not a day that goes by where I don't think of Terrell and how he made me a better officer. I remember him as an endlessly patient chief who took a green JG under his wing and showed him how to take care of our crew. Because Senior Chief Horne was a natural leader. He was a gifted ship handler, and he idealized our core values of honor, respect, and devotion to duty. For the past 6 years, the people who were lucky enough to know Senior Chief Horne, including his loving family, his shipmates, his fellow chiefs, and his friends, have all been carrying on his legacy in ways large and small. The man we were privileged to know impressed everyone with his absolute professionalism, his stoic humility, and his sly sense of humor. He always had a grin on his face and a kind word for absolutely everyone. We're all better for having known him, and I think I speak for all of us today when I say that it is absolutely awe-inspiring to see this beautiful cutter here today, ready to continue carrying on his legacy. And so today, as we prepare to place Coast Guard Cutter Horne into commission, I have two charges. First, to the community that knew Senior Chief Petty Officer Terrell Horne, I would ask you all that we all reach out to the captain and crew of Coast Guard Cutter Horne and bring them into the fold. They are part of our family now. And so let us help these brave men and women understand the man who is their namesake. Let us pass on the lessons that we learned from Senior Chief Terrell Horne, and let us honor, let us help these plank owners understand why Senior Chief Horne was such a great man even before that heroic night in December of 2012. My second charge is to the prospective commanding officer and crew of Coast Guard Cutter Horne. I would ask that each of you embrace the mantle of greatness that Senior Chief Horne's legacy carries. Learn about the man whose namesake, learn about the man whose your cutter is named after. At his core, Senior Chief Horne was a devoted mentor, and I am absolutely positive that he would be thrilled to learn that some of the lessons he imparted on us have made it down to you and continue to make the world a better place. Lieutenant Beal, you and your crew are now part of Senior Chief Horne's legacy. We wish you and your crew fair winds and following seas. We look forward to hearing about all of the adventures you will have, and we are excited to hear about the great things you will do with the mighty Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne. And now, it is my honor to call Petty Officer John D'Arcy, Petty Officer Brandon Langdon, and Petty Officer Michael Ford. Petty Officer Brandon Langdon, please rise and report.
Reporting as ordered.
Please proceed aboard the cutter. Prepare to place the commissioning pennant and the ensign aloft.
Nice.
MK1 Jonathan D'Arcy, BM1 Michael Walker, FS2 Brandon Langdon were the boat crew and boarding team on board Halibut's cutter boat with Senior Chief Horne at the time of the incident on December 2nd, 2012. BM1 Walker was the coxswain that Senior Chief pushed out of the way from the oncoming vessel. FS2 Langdon was ejected from the boat into the water with Senior Chief Horne and sustained injuries for which he was retired. And MK1 D'Arcy fired rounds in self-defense at the Panga as it approached. Admiral Schultz, I would be honored if you would join me at the podium to place Terrell Horne in commission.
Ship's company, attention.
I got it. On behalf of the President of the United States of America, I place United States Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne in commission. May God bless and guide all who will sail in her.
Thank you, Admiral Schultz. XO, hoist the colors and the commissioning pennant.
Aye, aye, Captain. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. I direct your attention to the cutter as we hoist the colors and the commissioning pennant. BM1 Walker, please hoist the colors and commissioning pennant.
Now, hoist the colors.
Captain, the colors and commissioning pennant are flying over the United States Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne.
Very well.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Lieutenant John Beal will now read his orders.
From Commander, Coast Guard Personnel Command. To Lieutenant John Beal, United States Coast Guard. Subject, official orders. When directed, proceed and report to pre-commissioning unit Terrell Horne for duties in conjunction with outfitting and delivery. Upon commissioning Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne, assume the duty of commanding officer. Admiral Schultz requests permission to break your flag.
Permission granted.
Aye, aye, Admiral. XO, break the Admiral's flag.
Aye, aye, Captain. BM2 Donnelly, break the Admiral's flag.
Aye, aye, sir.
Captain, the Admiral's flag is flying over Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne.
Very well.
Ship's company, parade rest.
XO, set the first watch.
Aye, aye, Captain. Colonel Terrell Horne, Sr., please step forward. The officer of the deck is the commanding officer's direct representative, and while on watch, is responsible for the safety and smooth operation of the cutter and her crew. The long glass is a traditional symbol of an officer of the deck's authority on board. Today, Colonel Terrell Horne, Sr., U.S. Air Force retired, will assist in setting the first watch by passing the long glass to our first officer of the deck, Chief Petty Officer Timothy Zorchek.
Now, Chief Petty Officer Zorchek has assumed the duties and responsibilities of the officer of the deck.
Captain, the first watch is set.
Very well. Good morning again. We are honored to have Mrs. Brandy Kemper with us today, the eldest sister of Senior Chief Petty Officer Terrell Horne and our cutter sponsor. The notion of a ship sponsor is deeply rooted in naval tradition, with a woman selected for each new cutter based on its namesake or planned mission. Sponsors play an important role in the life of a new cutter, maintaining a relationship with the crew and participating in ceremonies such as today's. Mrs. Kemper, I would be honored if you would join me and give the order to bring the cutter to life.
Lieutenant Beale, thank you for the kind introduction. This is such an honor. To be granted the sponsorship of the new Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne, named in honor of my brother, and represent the entire Horne family, is a tremendous privilege for me, and I am deeply touched. I know this is also very special to my brother, and that his spirit will be with this crew and all the crews which will serve aboard in years to come. All the Horne family members and friends of the family are also deeply touched by this incredible honor. I am so glad we have so many family members here to share in this very special day. To have close friends of our family present is very special as well. Thank you for attending. To everyone present, you have my sincerest thanks and that of the Horne family for being here. Thank you all. From my discussions with Terrell, with his shipmates, and from all that I have read, especially the documents contained in my brother's service record, the U.S. Coast Guard was an important part of his life. He had such caring for the well-being of his shipmates and was so dedicated to the Coast Guard as Admiral Schultz described in his remarks. The great pride my brother took in wearing his Coast Guard uniform is very evident by his special smile shown in the various photographs taken of him during his service in the Coast Guard. I know with all my heart and soul that if my brother were here today, he would be honored and humble to be a member of this plank owner crew of the U.S. Coast Guard's newest cutter. Just as the Terrell Horne crew before you now, my brother would be beaming with joy, standing tall and proud, ready to get underway on patrol to carry out all the important work of the U.S. Coast Guard. It is an added privilege to be a participant in this Coast Guard commissioning ceremony as the Terrell Horne 31st Cutter of the Sentinel class will now begin to carry out many important missions in the waters off the coast of California and beyond. May God's guiding hand and special blessings be with Lieutenant Beale and the crew as they accept charge of this new vessel and embark on their new assignments. I know my brother will be with them each time the Terrell Horne goes to sea. Lieutenant Beale, please join me at the podium. Please accept this framed gift as a symbol of my sponsorship of the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne. Admiral Schultz, I thank you and the U.S. Coast Guard for this special honor, granting me the sponsorship of the newest cutter, the Terrell Horne. Lieutenant Beale, a special note of thanks to you and your crew for making me feel like family. I also want to thank Coast Guard personnel, the commissioning committee, Bollinger Shipyards, L3 Technologies, the Coast Guard Foundation, and a special thanks to retired Captain Grant and so many others that worked so hard to make this ceremony very special, one that will be remembered forever. I can hear my brother saying, "A job well done by all." To my grandfather, participating in this ceremony is extremely special. My grandfather had a significant influence on my brother wanting to make servicing in the U.S. Coast Guard a career. Granddad, a special note of thanks to you, first for all you've done for our family over these many years, for your military service in the U.S. Air Force, and all your community service, and thirdly, for your participation here today, as your presence has added greatly to the significance of the ceremony. Thank you. As I end my remarks, I must mention again how deeply touched I am to represent my brother's entire family here today and those that were unable to join us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Officers and crew of the Coast Guard Terrell Horne, lay aboard and bring our cutter to life.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment when Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne officially joins the fleet. Would the audience please rise for the playing of Semper Paratus? Ship's company, hand, salute. Captain, Mrs. Kemper, the ship is manned and brought to life.
Very well.
Ready to. Ship's company, parade, rest. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Lieutenant John Beal will now report for duty.
Rear Admiral Gautier, sir, I report for duty in the 11th Coast Guard District.
Very well. Welcome aboard.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant John Beal, Commanding Officer, Coast Guard Cutter Terrell Horne.
Thank you for the introduction, XO. Good morning, and thank you for being here today. It is with great pride and excitement that our plank owner crew commissions Coast Guard Cutter Terrell Horne, named for enlisted hero, Senior Chief Boatswain's Mate Terrell Edwin Horne III, into the service of the United States of America. We are exceptionally grateful for the members of the Horne family, for our service chief, Commandant of the Coast Guard Admiral Carl Schultz, Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard Jason Vanderheyden, distinguished guests, port partners, friends, and family who are able to be here and share in this experience today. Thank you for being here. It is a particular honor to serve as the Cutter's first commanding officer, and I hope that under my leadership, the Terrell Horne will quickly establish itself as the best cutter in the fleet, although my FRC peers on the other ships here might disagree, but I'm pretty certain of that. It's not something that I can do alone, so I charge my crew to bring their best every day. When you depart the cutter at the end and head home at the end of every workday or every patrol, make a mental note of how your contributions bettered our crew, our ship, and our Coast Guard. We have an obligation as a military service members to be models for our peers in our nation in everything we do in and out of uniform. The crew and I did not have to look any further than the cutter's stern for guidance or inspiration in our efforts to contribute to the successes of the world's best Coast Guard. Senior Chief Horne, whose name is on the transom, represented the very best of our nation's military servicemen and women. I shared some of his exemplary military record with family and friends last evening during the chairman's reception, and it was clear, even in the beginning of his nearly 14-year career, that Senior Chief Horne was meant to be a leader. The example he set by his own performance and integrity was aspirational, and in turn he raised the bar for his shipmates and made every unit to which he was attached even better. Our crew intends to conduct all of our assigned missions in the image of Senior Chief Horne, and by doing so we can continue his service to our nation for decades to come. As a member of the Chief's Mess, Senior Chief Horne embodied all of the qualities our junior and senior enlisted officers alike expect of their senior enlisted leaders. Every Chief Petty Officer here, active and retired, shares a special bond with him by wearing the anchor. And the members of the LALB chapter of the Chief Petty Officers Association have been a great support network for our crew and our families just in the short time that we've been here on base. I have a great deal of respect for and a lot of trust in my own two chiefs on board Terrell Horne, and I hope that through them, our relationship with the Chief's Mess will continue to be strong. We've also begun a relationship with Senior Chief Horne's family and the crews both past and present of the Cutter Halibut, his final duty station. It is fitting that our Coast Guard cutter is homeported here in San Pedro, working for District 11, and Sectors Los Angeles, Long Beach, the commands for which Senior Chief Horne worked for during his final assignment on board the Halibut out of her home port just to the north of Marina del Rey, California. I hope that the relationship we've started with the Horne family will last crews and generations to come, and it is endearing, especially to me, that Senior Chief Horne's widow, Rachel, and their 3 sons, Cade, Miller, and Wells, are here to see the ship commissioned today. I extend a huge thank you to Brandy and Colonel Horne, to Ruth, to Terry, Phyllis, Sean, and Georgianne, and all of the other Horne family members here in attendance today, and those at home unable to make it. Mrs. Brandy Kemper, I am confident that your brother would be very pleased to have you serve as the sponsor of our cutter bearing his name. The crew and I look forward to the special relationship between sponsor and cutter, rooted in naval tradition. Colonel Terrell E. Horne Sr., thank you for serving as the ship's long glass presenter in our all-important ceremony today. I'm certain that your grandson would be honored that you assisted in setting the first watch aboard the cutter bearing his name. The Terrell Horne crew has spent more than 6 months preparing for this moment. We've attended dozens of schools, studying the mechanical and electronic systems on board the cutter, spent 7 weeks in Lockport, Louisiana, learning from the shipbuilders themselves, another 7 weeks in Key West, Florida, where it wasn't all fun, and we took ownership of the cutter to begin training on board before sailing her over 4,000 nautical miles across the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through the Panama Canal to deliver the cutter to its home port here in San Pedro, California. We missed birthdays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. The only exceptions that we were able to make during that time were to ensure that our shipmates were present for the birth of several new babies into the Coast Guard family. Could our ombudsman, Mrs. Atkins, and all other family members of my crew, the crew of the Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne, in attendance, please stand for a moment for us to recognize you and show our appreciation. Thank you very much. Someone else, or rather a team of others, also worked diligently over the last 6 months planning for this ceremony. I'd like to thank Commander Ibrahim Khalil and the entire Chairman's and Commissioning Committee, along with those civilian, reserve, retired, auxiliary, and active duty Coast Guardsmen chosen to assist, through whose meticulous planning and long hours made sure today's ceremony was perfect in every way. I would also ask them to stand to be recognized, but unfortunately for us, they won't rest until the reception because they're still actively engaged right now, but we'll just give them a round of applause also, please. With great trust in our senior leadership, undeterred by the government shutdown and a month without pay, our crew continued to work hard completing maintenance and preparations for upcoming assessments and inspections integral to our mission readiness. Our crew demonstrated exceptional teamwork and rightfully earned high praise in our evaluations. We learned and shared valuable lessons that our sister ships, the Forrest Rednauer, Robert Ward, and Benjamin Bottoms, throughout the pre-commissioning process to ensure our shared team success. The appearance and capabilities of the Sentinel-class fast response cutter don't just attract attention, they demand it. They are far superior to the 30-plus-year-old 110-foot island-class patrol boats that they are replacing across the United States and even overseas in the Middle East. I was especially fond, and I'll tell you plenty of stories, XO's heard a lot, of my experience aboard the 110s, and I anticipate that I will speak even more highly of the experiences and operational successes we share aboard the FRCs. We don't have to wait long to get started. On Monday, March 25th, we depart on our first patrol, well prepared to support national strategic objectives under District 11. Thank you, Rear Admiral Schultz, Rear Admiral Gautier, Captain Rochester, Commander Winburn, our distinguished guests, my crew and their families, my Coast Guard mentors, and my family, my parents, Brenda and Bob, and my Uncle Frank, who are in the audience. I'm lucky to be such a part of such a great team and to have such great people to follow. I appreciate your support and everything. I'm immensely grateful for this opportunity to command this exceptional crew that I have here behind me aboard our beautiful new ship. Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne, her plank owners, and future crews who serve aboard her will represent Senior Chief Horne through dedicated service according to the Commandant's guiding principles to be ready, relevant, and responsive in our own unit motto, courage, honor, sacrifice. Thank you. Mrs. Kemper, please join me at the podium. Mrs. Kemper, on behalf of the officers and crew of Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne, I present to you this framed gift and a demonstration of our support.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the benediction.
As we prepare to close, we lift our hearts for those standing the watch for us around the world today. Those missing in action, and especially those deployed and in harm's way, bring them back safely soon, Lord, to family and friends. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good report, if there is any virtue and if there is anything praiseworthy, think on these things, remembering this, that these three remain: faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Now go in peace to love God, to serve our great nation, and to serve one another. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Please remain standing for the departure of the official party. Now, United States Coast Guard, departing. District 11, departing. Terrell Horne, departing. Ship's sponsor, departing. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. You are now cordially invited to a reception hosted by the Commissioning Committee, Bollinger Shipyards, L3 Technologies, and a number of other generous donors. The reception will be held at Reservation Point. Please follow the direction of our ushers. We will begin bringing guests from the reception area on board for tours in 20 minutes. Please proceed to the reception. Announcements for tours will be made at the reception tent. On behalf of the Commandant of the Coast Guard and the plank owner crew of Coast Guard cutter Terrell Horne, thank you for joining us today. Ship's company, dismissed.